Hey everyone, welcome back to the realm. I'm Gina.
Hola, I'm Rich.
I'm Rob.
I'm Brian.
Rich is bilingual today.
I think
And
every
we'll
episode
say
I'm gonna say hello in a different language.
that would be great. And we should learn to say
Mm.
goodbye in a different language. That would be really great. So today, everyone, we are gonna turn the realm the reins. But yeah, we're gonna turn
Of
the
the
reins of the
realm. The
realm
reins of
over
the
to
realm. Yeah.
the reins of the realm over to Rob, who is going to talk to us about a multifaceted topic, and I'll let him do the introduction. Uh, Thank you for joining us during this spooky month where every Monday we're going to bring you a full length episode on something spectacularly spooky or scary. And every Wednesday, in place of Weird Weekly News, we'll be reading either uh, a listener submitted story or some other short scary story or other types of fun things that we'll bring up. So without further ado, how's that for? Did I sound fancy? I was trying to
You
sound
Mhm.
sound
fancy.
very fancy.
So without any further ado, let's turn it over to you, Rob. Take it.
No problem. Thank you. I don't know why you couldn't done the Dracula voice if you can do that voice.
I'm just not. What I can do is like we just recorded an episode of Weird Weekly News, and they wanted me to read the story in a spooky voice. I don't have a spooky voice, but there's that like cartoon Hotel Transylvania, right? No, the only thing I can say is that one line where he's like, "I did not say blah blah blah," and that's literally all I can do.
You do
I
say
mean, if
blah
you
blah blah.
want me to do Elmo or not Elmo, what is it?
Elmo.
Grover, I can do that.
Oh.
So.
Anyways,
Super Grover?
Well, you know that book with Grover, like the monster at the end of the book. So I
oh
read that. I read
yeah.
that for all my kids. I read it for my grandkids, and so I always do Grover's voice, and they love it. So I'm fairly decent at it. Maybe I'll do it for you sometime.
Okay, excellent.
All right, Rob, it's all you.
All right, thank you. So as a lot of paranormal different activities and entities and crypto, some are, exclusive to some areas where people who know the Bray Road Monster may not know who
Mhm.
Spring Heel Jack is, but people in England who know Spring Heel Jack probably have never heard of Bray Road. But there
Mhm.
are some that are international and worldwide, not just UFOs and Bigfoots. Um, Today, I was going to talk about shadow persons, sleep paralysis, wake paralysis, the shadow you see in the corner of your eye. You may sometimes you hear sounds, whooshing sounds or electrical sounds, hums, the figure you'll see in the corner of your eye, and then when you look, disappears. So many cultures have this, have for thousands of years, have been having shadow people or entities like the shadow people. They may look different, but the experience is always kind of the same. So, but like I said, they look different. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about the Hat Man. Sometimes they're hooded, sometimes they're
Hmm.
smoky. They can be dark or light smoke humanoid. Sometimes they have red eyes. Sometimes they look like witches or shape shifting. But I mean, the experience and the way they act are usually the same. The experiences you get. Um, so yeah, sometimes though, when you hear the sound, you can hear them um, voices, and I feel like I've had that experience myself, and I'll talk about that later. Um, Screaming or whispering. Either way, though, through all this, and they've been seen all over. Sometimes they've been caught on video or on pictures, and that happens quite frequently. And if I remember, didn't we get a picture of a shadow person at Farrar, Rich? Didn't she
Uh,
catch something in a doorway?
yeah, similar to that. Probably more of a shadow person. The camera that I used for that was a full spectrum camera, so you didn't get it more of a you didn't see it as a shadow, but you could see the outline of something standing there that was definitely shaped like a person, and it was huge. It wasn't
It
like it
was.
was a person. It was a taller thing, which I believe in some of these lores of the Hat Man and stuff like that. Don't they Rob describe it
yes.
as a bigger figure.
Oh yes, Hatman and the Jinn are usually seen as much larger
Yeah.
as shadow people.
Yep.
I'm
That
gonna
kind not to ruin like our sorry to interrupt, not to ruin our Wednesday episode, so I won't, but whenever you mention like the shadow and the screaming and that they make these noises, uh so you guys should catch our Weird Weekly News episode on Wednesday. We're actually doing a scary story in place of it, listener submitted, and they talked about that where there's like somebody kind of they thought was standing over top of their bed screaming at them. So that I
Right.
found that pretty interesting.
So to not to butcher a bunch of Native American names, but the Chowada are one of the 5 main tribes. They've been around for 4,000 years in North America, and they were one of the more advanced tribes at that time. They had different kinds of trading and laws, and they would let other races marry in, which was not heard of back then in any of the other tribes. But they had the Nawosa Cheeto, which appears to
Ooh.
people who have evil thoughts. It comes to them at night and devours their soul. They're so afraid of this that to this day they still will not say the name. They have the Nawusa Flea, which actually means long black being, which lives in the woods and torments children and hunters at dusk who stray too far from their camps. Of course, in Europe, we know the incubus that torments women, succubus that torments men. The word nightmare actually comes from the Norse word mare, which is a demon who sits on their chest and tries to strangle you while you sleep. The same creature is known as the Kikimora in Russia to the Czechs and to the Polish. The Samaritans, well, you know, one of the first written languages, 5,000 years ago had the Alu, which would paralyze, possess you, put you in a coma even. In Arabic and Islamic lore have the jinn, which we know as genies, which were invisible, shape-shifting. They were known as bigger entities. They would travel in.
Yeah, the genies are fine though. They usually do great impersonations, a lot of references from days gone by. Grant
Could
your
you
3
could you sing
wishes.
that song for us?
Prince
Wait,
Ali, fabulous.
um, yeah, which one? Wait, no, what is the one? You never had a friend, never had a friend, never had a friend like me. Bum, bum, bam, bam. Yeah, see, Genie's ton of fun.
Genies are tons of fun. Because oddly, even in their lore, sometimes they can be good guys and have been known to protect, but they've also been known to kill. So,
Is that like the Wishmaster movie?
the TV show?
No, the movie, The
Oh, from the
Wishmaster. Is
80s?
that it was like it was like mid to late 90s. Robert Englund was in it.
That's
No.
Nightmare. That's Nightmare on Elm Street.
Stop that. That no. It was
Wishmaster was
Wishmaster.
Wishmaster was 1997.
There you go.
Wow.
And who else was in it? Was it Mina Savari, somebody like that?
Let's see here, because it was a Wes Craven film.
Yep.
Robert Englund was in it.
No,
Tammy
Kane
Lauren
Hodder
was in
it.
it.
Yeah.
The Jinn was Andrew Devov.
Yeah, maybe Tammy Lauren is who I was thinking. What else has she been in?
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
that's what I was thinking. That's definitely not Mina Savari, but hey, Wishmaster, that's the
Same
premise
look.
of that movie though, is it's I think they call him the Jinn, but the
Yeah.
wishes don't go as to planned, and it's
Right.
Yeah, it's spelled DJINN is how they spell the Jinn.
Yeah, I think they're
Well, wait, there's also John Novak as a Jinn was in it too.
Yeah, I think the Jinn are portrayed different ways in different type of culture. And
right.
I think even across like the pop culture things with TV shows and movies, you know, they all have the general same basis behind them, but they do different things. I'm familiar with it from Supernatural. You know, that's one of the supernatural beings that they encounter, you know, and that, you know, sucks the essence out of you, but it puts you in a dream state where you think everything's great, so it all kind of, you know it's interesting because it all goes back to the nightmares or the sleep paralysis, or it all goes back to that dream state of different things, and I didn't realize that when I was kind of perusing the topics that Rob was going to go through. I didn't realize that all three of those ones, how intertwined they were. So it's very interesting.
But also that in the U.S. military that has been stationed out in areas out there in the Middle East, they report stories. They have several stories out there, the current stories about seeing the jinn or shadow people. But during the Vietnam War, the Lutration War, Civil War was happening, and several Hmong refugees came over to America during that time. And there was a phenomenon, and you can look up the news on this, where a lot of the Hmong children were dying, and there was no explanation. They were dying in their sleep. And they have a pressure demon that sits on your chest, as most of these creatures do, entities, and suffocates you. You're okay if you do your rituals before bed and you keep your ceremonial objects next to you. It was believed, the Hmong believed this was a punishment for leaving their country. This story was really big. In 1978, the LA Times published a big story on it. And this is where Wes Craven got his idea for Nightmare on Elm Street, which has
I was hoping you were going to get on that, Rob.
Yep, Freddy Krueger is
Thank
based
you.
on a shadow man.
Yep.
He is based on one of the Hat Men. So nobody really knew much about the shadow creatures, and through any of the history wasn't really put out there till about 2001 through Art Bell. He did a show and had a listener call up. He didn't know much about it, asked his listeners, and he got like 45,000 stories in like 1 week about shadow people. We talk about, like, people talk about night hags and that sit on you and choke you and suffocate you. They talk about demonic type of shadow people that are the ones that threaten and swear and smell like sulfur, and they all go back into the choking. The one with a lot that is really common and is one of the worst ones is the Hat Man, because the Hat Man never has anything where it's just an illusion or just something you see. They claimed Hat Men to be up to 10 feet tall, always wearing a large hat, sometimes a fedora, sometimes a top hat. Many believe that the Hat Man is a warning sign. Sometimes they believe it's the warning of the apocalypse and the end of the world. Is believed to be attracted or create negative energy, and death and bad luck are always seen to follow after a sighting of the Hat Man.
Well, that's like The Conjuring 2. Had the Crooked Man. He was like depicting this around, and it was a hat, and he like got really tall, skinny, weird, and kind of took up all the space as a shadow. That's what I think of.
So what are shadow people? What are night hags? Why is this such a widespread phenomenon over time? And many people believe many different things, like interdimensional beings. A lot of people believe they're ghosts, and a lot of people believe that they're aliens, which actually seem to come up a lot. So I mean, I don't know how I feel about. I mean, a ghost would seem to be like the obvious thing, right? But usually ghosts are light and energy and full featured, where shadow people usually can't make out the face unless they have glowing eyes. Astral projection, even if somebody is supposedly seen astral projecting, they're still seen as like a ghost. Interdimensional travelers is believed that maybe, it could actually be you warning yourself. But I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. But Christians definitely believe they're demons, especially the Hat Man, which they believe is a demon or could be the devil himself. So a lot of this comes up into also, the science of the whole thing, which is kind of the skeptic of the whole situation, because there was a lot of information on that side of the whole shadow people. Now I know that, like, I can't say that for sure that I've ever been in bed and felt paralyzed or suffocating, but I know that I've been asleep in my house in this house I'm currently in, and I've heard my name in my ear. There was a long time, and it was a scary story I was going to share way back, but it's we thought my grandmother was haunting my house, and we kind of exorcised her out of the house. But nonetheless, it went on for a
Poor
while. It was
Granny.
like years that we would get the voices. My wife claimed that she would hear her name in her ear, Amy. So I don't know what was up with that. I don't know if anybody else has ever had these experiences, but when we go to sleep, our brain still active. Our brain doesn't really know we're asleep, but it inadvertently shuts our muscles off. I mean, we keep breathing, and whatever muscles keep us from peeing our pants or whatever else is still working. But sometimes there's like crossed wires, and this is done through sleep tests. And there's names for this stuff that hypogygonia and the stuff that I'm horrible at pronouncing and trying to read this and figure this out. As far as the big words, it's easier to just explain it to me. So, it's through the sleep studies that they have done, when they believe that sometimes you're in that state and you're falling asleep and the wires get crossed and you're not really asleep, but your brain isn't asleep. That's your brain can go into the dream state. Your muscles are already shut off, but you're kind of awake. So it's already creating the hallucinations that you see somebody or see something. There's also a version of that where a little bit deeper, you'll actually feel stuff. So since humans aren't really wired any different, and we're not really wired any different for thousands of years, it's also, is that what that is? So, all science. Can it be easily explained away? Do we just want it to be some kind of spooky entity, or is there something more to it? I mean, what do you guys think?
I've had the sleep paralysis thing happen before, but that was a dream that I had. So I've had a couple dreams, and you know how most people say, "Oh, you dream of falling, and you always like wake up before you hit bottom." I've dreamt of falling and hit bottom twice, where I did not wake up prior to that. And one of those I'll never forget was like at a rock quarry, because when I lived in West Virginia, we used to go cliff diving off the side of, like, you kind of trek back in on this hiking trail and then you jump into the water. It was like really high up, and
sounds horribly safe.
I was 11. I don't 12, maybe. I don't care.
Even better.
Fun. Yeah. So, but I was kind of there, but it was kind of empty, like a rock quarry would be. So like the water was gone, and because I was taking somebody there to like show them, and I fell. So I think I was 16 when I had this dream, maybe 15 or 16. And I fell and I actually hit bottom, and I felt myself hit the ground. And I woke up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I felt like every bone in my body was broken or locked. And it felt like it took like an eternity for me to come to and be able to catch my breath and start breathing. But that was the scariest fucking thing.
Or possibly a night hack, one of the two. So
maybe, I don't, but it was all, and that was when I had my bedroom up in this attic, like where I was living. We were living in this like duplex, and the third floor was finished. So I stayed up there, and that was the place that I did mess around with a Ouija board when I was younger with my friends. So
when me and Amy refer to it as if we're lying in bed and all of a sudden one of us twitches, like, did you fall off the curb? Because you have that dream and you're standing there, and like I said, it's your muscles are still, your brain's doesn't know the difference, so your muscles are supposed to be shut off, but something happens and you kick. I don't know why it's always like falling off something, but that tends to be the big one. I don't usually have falling dreams, but it'll be like a tripping or something. Be half awake, half sleeping. Whoa, oh goodness. So
Well,
that also, with the alien thing was interesting too, because since everything with the shadow people are always like featureless, but you can always tell if somebody's wearing a hat, I guess, is that they claim that if they focus on it enough, some people, that they look more like creatures with features, with big eyes and little mouths. And that's where the alien part of it comes in, because I forgot to mention was that shadow people are really common with people who claim to have been alien abductees.
Ah,
It's interesting.
Right. Like they're coming back and checking on their experiments or.
I really liked the part where you mentioned, is it another version of us coming to warn us? Because I feel like there was like a movie or something, unless I'm misremembering or dreamt it. But wasn't there a movie about that where like the other side was actually like a parallel universe or something, and like they were trying to communicate with, like they figured out that the ghost activity, maybe I'm like giving somebody a movie idea now, but I feel like
Stranger Things, Poltergeist, What Lies Beneath. I mean, you're going, there's usually a commonality
the ghost
between.
activity was specifically for that, and so they were able to like warn something on the other side. But either way, I found that a really interesting concept, because what if like this alternate universe, like the parallel universe that we're living in, has found a way to like break through the veil and send communication over.
Well, if that were the case, then there would be like with the night hags and hat people be like the bad guys figured out how to do it, the evil villain. So they're coming over here to terrorize us. It seems to be in a lot of current or modern any kind of paranormal, there seems to be the interdimensional being kind of thing, is possession or demons or even UFOs. It's coming to be quite common. But there doesn't seem to be any real common ground on what they think it is, except for whatever scientific stuff, which, I mean, a lot of it makes sense. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a shadow person unless I've been up for 3 days straight partying and in the corner of my eyes, I would see a lot of shadow people, but those days are gone. So I haven't really had any other shadow person experience or any kind of paralysis. I thought mostly the story was just interesting in the way it tied in with the Hat Man, because for a while the Hat Man was a newer thing for me. It does go all over the place and all over the world, but science has been happening the whole time. And it's also interesting that it mentions that the reason why when you're in the sleep paralysis or the half awake or half asleep, when you're sleeping, and the serotonin and the dopamine, which what lowers your mood, causes depression and fear. So when you would see shadow people or be in these sleep paralysis, why you would panic and fear cage and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, the thing with the sleep paralysis is you're hitting all the points, and then there's the big one that usually people who have the the shadow people and all that kind of stuff, there's usually some sort of physicality that they associate with it. And with sleep paralysis, that's one of the feelings that you get, because you can't move. If you try to move, you can't. It feels heavy. You could say, oh, somebody's holding me down. And it's not that something is holding you down. It's that you can't move because your brain has shut off one part of your body because it's supposed to be doing something else.
It shuts the muscles off, but you're not really asleep.
Right. And it just had a mishap that it's allowing your optics to be able to see what's going on in that moment. Our brain does that kind of stuff. I may have touched on it a long time ago on here, but that the somebody on my hockey team once was doing their thesis on deja vu, and one of the things that they were finding through all of the research that's been done about deja vu is that that's kind of that same thing with our brain. When we see something, our brain is always remembering like a hard drive, and it puts those files into a certain location. Every once in a while, it takes one of those things you just saw, or it moves it into the wrong spot. So then you see something and think, boy, I felt this before. This thing has happened. It's just that the little memory file was flipped around. So the brain does those kinds of things, like with the sleep paralysis. And if you can't move and you feel like you're being held down, you get all the physical things that people associate, or people who passed away, like the people that Wes Craven, heard the story and then did Nightmare on Elm Street with them, where you go, oh my God, what happened? We'll never know because they passed away. We can't ask them. But if they had a medical condition that goes along with the sleep paralysis, something like that could happen. And as with the aliens, and by the way, I believe in the aliens. I think I've been clear about that, and ghost and all that kind of stuff. I'm there, but skeptical. But with the people that have been abducted, but also have the shadow people and the same experiences, I go, right, they just had sleep paralysis before, and that experience was them being abducted. And now when they have it again, they're getting something else. This time they're getting shadow people. So it would stand to reason that people who have an abduction story probably have a higher probability of having shadow people. But that being said, I also think two things could be true at once. The version of shadow people that people do feel has that physicality, I chalk most of that up to the sleep paralysis. But then you also have other shadows that you see, which could just be paranormal in the ghost realm, not something different than that. And that's what I think most of the stuff, when people are talking about seeing a shadow, it's easier for me to say, oh, that's probably more in the paranormal ghost realm than it would be an entity like a shadow person, or like the one that Rich got the picture of. If you have that, you should post that somewhere too, Rich.
I have it somewhere. I know I do because I just saw it.
Yeah,
I have
you
it.
should post that so people can see, because I remember being very impressed by it, but I go, oh, I wonder if that's a ghost there. I know somebody who told me a story, funny because it's Halloween with our scary stories, that the house that his dad had when he was a kid, his parents were divorced. So when he would stay at his dad's house, he always remembered his room was downstairs, and it was set up a certain way where the bathroom was there in his room, but you had to walk through his room to get to it. And he said he remembered once when he was probably like 10 or 11 years old, he was in there and he woke up at night because he said somebody was at the edge of his bed. He thought it was his dad coming home and walking through to the bathroom down there, but it wasn't. And then later he saw it in the corner. And then he said he just did the thing, like when you're a kid and you close your eyes and just want it to be gone. He said he must have fell asleep at some point. But then he said when he asked his dad later the next day, he was like, no, I wasn't down there. And he said it wasn't until years later that, when he was a grown man, that his grandpa was telling stories about that house, that, yeah, they knew that there was all this stuff going on, but they never said anything when he was a kid because they didn't want him to be scared. So they had stories of these shadows. When I hear that, I go, I don't think that was a sleep paralysis thing. To me, I think that that's more of maybe there was something else there, a different entity, a ghost of some sort, and you're seeing it, because there was no physicality to it. There wasn't any feeling of I was being held down or I was being pushed or anything like that. So I think you could have both things. You could have the sleep paralysis, could probably explain one, and maybe the other one could be a little bit more paranormal. Or maybe they're the same thing.
Well,
I don't know. This is all theories.
I think
None of this is
I think
official.
it's interesting. Well, I think it's interesting that you brought up like a medical condition, because that was something I was going to mention. Because there are people that have like sleep apnea, if you've ever heard of sleep apnea, and that's essentially where people they breathe in such a manner where either A, it's not effective for proper oxygenation, so your oxygen levels dip very low when you're sleeping, or B, where you have complete absence of breathing for a period of time. every person stops breathing for so many times a minute, and that's, or so many times, and is it a minute? um and that's normal. Okay, so and they'll count it by an hour. So when you go have these sleep studies done, they'll talk about how many events you had in an hour, and you'll have so many events in an hour where you'll stop breathing for a few seconds, right? That's normal. So then there's this threshold where if you do it enough times, it's abnormal. So then you talk about a decrease in oxygenation. You're talking about anytime you have a decrease in oxygenation, obviously your brain isn't going to get what it needs. The body's not going to get what it needs. And so what happens when metabolically we're not well? Well, we can start to hallucinate or have different things affected. I know when I was very sick and I had COVID, and I was like, I thought I was like, it was right in October, that first year that COVID had come out. And I was so sick, and they had no room in the hospital. And they're like, go home, come back when you need a ventilator, kind of thing. And I remember laying on my stomach to support my breathing. And I had Kez waking me up every 30 minutes. And Rob, I mean, like, I think, I don't know if you had something similar happen when you had it, but
I
it
was
got
in
to
the
the point where
hospital.
I had, yeah, you were hospitalized. And there was a point where in my dream, something was saying to me, breathe, Gina, breathe. And I'll never forget this. And I woke up kind of like snorting and like kind of gasping for breath out of my sleep. But in my dream, I was dreaming of something that was telling me to breathe. And so, I'm wondering if like the lack of oxygenation and whatever problems that was causing me was affecting in my dream, that literally there was this voice talking to me. And
Well,
so, or was that paranormal? Was there somebody like watching over me at that time and telling
well,
me,
you
like
have
how,
that affliction, so that could be
yeah,
something
exactly. I
something
do.
something more
I,
paranormal. But the brain, like to us, awake and asleep is just completely different, right? But your
yeah.
brain is wishy-washy because the brain, like I said, doesn't know it's asleep. And it shuts down things automatically when you're relaxing, and it keeps the certain parts, working. But maybe it does. That's part of the sleep apnea. But you would think when people are sleeping in bed with somebody and something where sleep paralysis happens or a hag attack or whatnot, when the person you're sleeping with has sleep apnea, right? Because that's usually the person that tells the person with sleep apnea you need to have something done, right? Because usually most people don't know that. Yeah, so when the brain's confused, and it thinks it's sleeping and causes hallucinations of any kind, it's hard to decipher. When people fall asleep in their sleep, yeah, we'll never know. Or they die in their sleep, we'll never know. That's
Well,
that we're all,
Rich and I have talked about this on some episodes that we had done prior to you guys jumping on board, where we talked about how, like, yes, we could come up with scientific explanations for a lot of things, but why is it that cultures globally around the world, where every culture has their own version of this same kind of thing, and maybe hadn't even communicated with each other? Because we talked about like the history of Halloween, which we're going to replay that episode for Halloween this month. But we talked about how like everybody has these experiences, and they're explained the same. And we're talking about back in the 1700s, 1600s, 1500s, where there wasn't, like, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have telephones, we didn't have text messaging or email where people could like corroborate stories, and travel was incredibly difficult between even cities, let alone continents. So how is it across the whole globe we have all these different cultures back to the beginning of time that have these same experiences and stories that are so similar prior to anybody even being able to communicate with each
science?
other about it?
Yep.
So
Maybe
what'd you say?
we're all
Because
more
we're not
alike than you
wired
think.
that different. Like I'd mentioned, we're not really wired that
Yeah.
different as far as the sleeping part goes, when we hear or see something when we're sleeping. But when you actually, I mean, you can't use that when you're, actually see an entity or catch one on video. So to me, yeah, that part of the shadow person falls into the ghost, and we're always going to have
Mm-hmm.
those stories.
Unless it's just part of our programming matrix.
Could be.
I think what Gina, when you were talking about, your dream telling you to breathe, that's all I could think about was the brain does know some things because that it's just reminding you the same way that everybody has had the one where in your dream you open up the bathroom door and you're in the bathroom. And then what happens? Your brain slowly, you wake up and you go, I'm not in the bathroom right now. But your brain, that was your brain telling you this is going to happen. So this is what's happening. But your brain knows that this is what has to happen. But somehow it's very vivid in your dream, just like with you being told you have to breathe because you needed to breathe at that moment. And it was very literal.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff is kind of universal with all of us, which is what makes me think with a lot of the things, except for aliens. I'm going to stick to aliens. There's no way that everybody could talk about those around the world without it being real. But with a lot of the things, though, I really think that us human beings are just all very similar. And the way that we go upon collecting knowledge or what the next step is, maybe that's just ingrained in us. And it doesn't really matter where we're from. If we were to take a group of, grizzly bears across Canada and look at 50 of them, and no matter if they're from one side or the other, and you'd probably have a pretty good grasp on how they do things. That's just because that's what they are. They're grizzly bears, So I think sometimes maybe some of those things, not aliens, those are real, are just all the similarities that people are going to stumble upon no matter where you are. Which is good. We're very
Why
alike
grizzly
people.
bears?
I don't know. I was going to use polar bears, but then I thought I'll use grizzly bears. The polar bear one has been used before.
Is that a common metaphor? Polar bears.
They sold out
The
the
polar,
Coca-Cola, so
yeah, they did. On Loveline, they would love to use the polar bear as if you want to know if you if you were to just look at 100 polar bear over the course of a year, you'd have them pretty figured out the same way if you took 100 of us and just watched us over the course of a year, you'd have human beings figured out too.
When you're sleeping and having hallucinations, kind of cut and dry almost, but when you see the entities and you're not asleep or moving through a room, I've seen a lot of videos of it, so that's the part you can't explain. And
that's the part that I go ghost more than
ghosts. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that's because that makes sense.
I think it falls into the category of everything else that we say and do is until it happens to you or until you experience it.
Right.
You can sit and debate it and go one way or the other, but until it happens to you and you realize how real it is, to you it's real no matter what anybody's going to tell you. So I mean, and like Gina said when we talked about it in some of those other episodes earlier seasons, go back to the beginning of time and you get all these cultures and everything that are saying the same thing or seeing the things in the sky, yet there's no way they can communicate. It's not being communicated like it would be today. So I mean, there's got to be a grain of truth somewhere that at least makes you wonder what it is, because just the rationality of saying like you could do today to try to rationalize it or whatever as to explain what it could be. Back then, I don't know how you explain some of that stuff.
But then where do they come from? Is there a whole underworld of like hat men, shadow people, night hags, or is there just one? I think we talked about this in another episode. It's like if you have these instances happening in multiple places across the planet, is it the one same person? Is it the one same entity or being? Is it multiple? Is there a whole I don't know.
Is there more than one Mothman kind of thing?
Right.
But now when it comes to any of those Bogmen, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yetis, right? They're like worldwide, but we still don't have a corpse.
Right.
That's true.
Interdimensional beings.
think
And
we've
they
talked
take their
about that
dead
too.
with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I think we talked about that with Beast of Bray Road,
Yeah.
and some other things that we've seen. About interdimensional or portals or whatever. I mean, it's interesting. It brings up a good point and another topic for another day, obviously, that we could talk about forever. But yeah, I mean, how do you not how do you not have some proof that you would, other than a couple crumbs here or there, how do you not have the big one when it's supposedly worldwide?
Well, didn't
That's
Josh
the
Gates
point,
with the Yeti, like, didn't he find, or they let him
Footprint.
look at
He
the
found some
like
hair.
skull hair thing, and he said it was very ramshackly put together, that looked like it was
I think they
pieced
debunked
together
that.
from many different things. Yes, they
he
did.
didn't they allow him to take pictures of it or something? And I
Yeah,
forget
they
what it was,
mistakenly
but
let him
somehow they
take pictures
determined
or
it was.
something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Didn't
they
they, at
determined
the
it.
end of that episode, wasn't there something in the bushes and they found some hair? And
It
the
was
hair
hair and
couldn't
a
be
footprint. I
was
know
some
he
Maybe.
hair they took in the
Footprint.
DNA, said it was of the ape family, but it couldn't be. It was an unidentifiable
Oh,
ape.
that did happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yes.
That did happen on that episode.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Inconclusive or whatever. Yeah. You get a lot of that. A lot of
Yeah.
things are inconclusive.
Well, yeah, because when it's inconclusive, it means that infinity is what it could be. It
And
could
that
be
means
anything if
they're
it's
going to have a whole
inconclusive.
other season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, what
That's how we
season are
keep
we
having
on?
our season.
3. We're on season
Okay.
3, right?
No.
Okay.
Oh, for
No,
us,
4.
4.
we're
Yeah.
Four?
season 4 here.
Okay.
That's
man,
why
we're-
we're gonna have season, like, I mean, obviously we probably won't have season 400. I mean, unless we pass this down
What?
to our children.
I
Or
don't have
season
room for that
400, we can have
negativity.
episode 400, huh?
I don't have room for negativity. We're going to be doing episode
Are you
500.
living for long? Oh, I
I'm-
did see
I'm
though.
doing it.
Wait,
I'm not going
wait,
over.
we might be able to do it. You know why? Because I saw some kind of prediction recently. I gotta find this. I might screenshot it for Weird Weekly News. But I saw some prediction that supposedly we're supposed to figure out immortality by 2032.
Oh,
So
well, that's convenient.
Well, that'll be
Yeah.
fun. That's a whole great topic because then we're going to overpopulate because nobody's dying. So we're going to have to Hunger Game.
Sweet.
I am not.
How-
We're not going to
So
purge or
you,
hunger.
so you mean
We're going to,
You mean
there's going to be
AI
a
is gonna
purge or a
figure it
Hunger
out.
Game or something. So
Yeah.
AI
population.
might figure it out. I don't know. I'll have to look up the article. We'll talk about it. I'll find the article. Maybe we'll do it on our first Weird Weekly News episode in December when we go back to I'm already in December and in November when we go back to our regular programming. But so maybe we will have 400 seasons, but for sure we'll have at least 40. I think we can handle that. Could you imagine us like I wonder what it'll be like though when we're all like older and we do this podcast. Maybe if we're like in the nursing home or something and it's like a virtual wall and we just, we don't even need all this like equipment and microphones. It'll be great.
Like Tony
Can't
Stark.
wait for the
Ooh.
yeah, I can't wait for the technology. Can't wait.
Yeah. Well,
So if
Nice.
any listeners out there have had any experiences with like sleep paralysis, night hags, shadow people, hat man, I see a couple hat men on the screen here. But no, if any of you have had any experience with that, we'd love to hear your stories. Because we do like to revisit topics when we bring them up, because the first time we bring them up just scratches the surface, because we'll always be revisiting the things that we've talked about as things evolve and more information comes in from everybody.
Very true.
so yeah, if you have any stories, let us know. You can email us at the realm
connectedrealm@gmail.com.
connectedrealm.com or messenger us
On
through
Facebook.
Facebook, and that's it. We'll
Yes.
have this episode out, and stay tuned for more episodes coming up every Monday.
Yes. Through
let me
October.
let me say this for all of the listeners. We brought up Nightmare on Elm Street a few times in this podcast. I'm not saying that we need to do another movie review this month, but I think that we should. And maybe it needs to be a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I don't know what you guys think. Maybe if anybody
Next
is listening
Monday, let's
and they
do it.
have and they have if
Whoa.
anybody has one that they want us to watch from Nightmare on Elm Street, let us know which one.
Slow your roll, Ebert.
Let's pump the brakes here. I'm on.
Yep.
I'm on episode. I'm on season 5 or whatever of Friday the 13th. I'm on number 5 right now. I get to skip 6 because we watched that already. But then I'm going to continue on. As I said, I went back and started watching all of them. I'm on 5 now. So
Okay,
I don't know that I don't know if I could fit Freddy into there. However, I do believe there's a Freddy versus Jason episode.
Oh yes.
Oh okay.
So,
yeah.
You know,
So
at some point I'm going to get part of that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait. So
two
did you watch part
Nightmares
5
were
yet?
good.
I had just started part 5. I am probably. I think they just took away the guy that looked like Chop Suey in the ambulance.
Oh, okay.
So you guys
The
know let's
chocolate
talk
loving
about
guy.
the Jason episode.
Well, this is part 5 that he's on of A New Beginning. Part 5, A New Beginning.
Yeah, and 6 is the one we reviewed. So
Yeah,
I have a few
I won't
more to go
spoil
after
anything
that,
for you with this
no, I
one.
don't. I
Okay.
probably saw them all when they came out, but I don't remember any of them. So bits and pieces. So
It's been a long time.
it's been a long time. I'm focused on the Realm and TRPD right now. So I got a lot of things that I'm thinking about and planning, and you know.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, TRPD, the Realm Paranormal Detectives, we've been in some investigations. We got several more planned coming up that we'll be talking about on future episodes here before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. We got a lot coming at you. If you have an investigation, if you have a place that you would like us to investigate, we will travel within reason. I think this next investigation, we're driving 8 hours to go to. Some of the team members are driving 8 hours to go to. Our investigations are free of charge, but we do vet the locations. So you could make a request for an investigation at connectedrealm@gmail.com, connectedrealm@gmail.com. And we will take into consideration your location, or if there's someplace you'd like to see us investigate. We'll start doing some interactive investigations. I know with the last one, we did a Facebook Live, and we're playing around with these next ones to see how we can institute Zoom, the use of Zoom on investigations, to let our listeners come in and watch us do some portions of the investigation live as it happens. So lots coming at you guys here soon. So whether it's commercial or some property or residential, send us a message, and we'll see what we can do to help you guys out. So with that, it was fun talking about this, and we'd love to hear your guys' opinions on it. Yeah. So until next week, see you later.
Bye, everybody. Peace out.
Hello.
Mahalo.
Auf Wiedersehen.